Synchronicity University presents these incredible programs, and look, you've got just a couple days left to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class this November, only at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of October 27, 2024. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. It is a remarkable astrological week, without a doubt. Big moves happening in the sky now. Boy, is it a very special time. And it truly is so special now. Powerful energies are with us, and the big news this week, it has to be the new moon taking place in the sign of Scorpio on Friday. This new moon, in and of itself, is speaking in harmony with Saturn. That's lovely. It's a stabilizing energy overall. And in the sign of Scorpio, it's like we really understand deeply what's going on at the core, and we're able to find a new beginning by affecting change from the core forward. And so that sense of new beginnings or changed circumstances or new chapters, they come about almost organically. They come about because the thing itself that is beginning again, the area of life itself, depending on your sign that feels like it is having a fresh new beginning, well, you understand how to change it within so that the outward changes must manifest, that they flow forward. But first, there tends to be some difficult truth that we might be wrestling with as to what's really going on. A part of Scorpio energy has to do with finding the answer to a mystery. And in finding that answer, we find strength. And as much as this new moon in and of itself is amazing, that trying to Saturn says that whatever changes now, it has the potential to last. These are changes that will be around for a long time to come. But there's something else happening under the same sky that I actually think speaks to this new moon energy that much more, becomes that much more profound. And I'm going to invite you to look at this larger configuration playing out in this chart. It is what astrologers call a kite formation. It is a major configuration in the sky, and it denotes when we've got several planets in harmony and supreme harmony, and then two planets opposite each other. So they form this larger kite in the sky. And what tends to be the anchoring principles are what is on opposite ends of the opposition, in this case, Pluto and Mars, and it is where the kite is pointing that is essentially receiving all the energy. Now think about the planets that are involved in this. This is huge, I have to say. As part of that opposition, it is the ancient ruling planet of Scorpio, Mars, that is opposite the modern ruling planet of Scorpio, Pluto. And these become the key anchors of this larger configuration, but they are ultimately pointing at the ancient ruling planet. And I see these energies in interesting ways. Whenever we have Mars standing across Pluto, as we do once every 2 years or so is when this aspect takes place, well, it's always this sense of understanding how we used to understand Scorpion energy and which way in which we now desire to go with it. It is looking at some old sense of understanding within ourselves about what we think is really going on, what we're willing to fight for, what's really got to change, and a more elevated, if not evolutionary driven understanding of self that the modern ruling planet represents. And how are we going to raise its vibration so that we are bringing forward this sense of power, but it's rooted in reverence for understanding how power can be a force of destruction, but also of healing as well, and what part we want to play in it. It is this sense of looking at some older part of us so that we may heal it and move forward into whom it is that we are becoming. This opposition happening under the same sky as the new moon. And even though it'll be at the very beginning of next week that this opposition of Mars and Pluto does perfect, it is under the light of the new moon that we'll be seeing this energy that much more clearly. And this opposition in particular it is happening at the very end of their respective signs, cardinal signs, no less, with Pluto, the very end of the sign of Capricorn, and Mars at the very end of the sign of Cancer. Now, it is Pluto that is now in its final moments, wrapping up a larger transit that Pluto has been in, going all the way back to 2008, when Pluto first started stepping into the sign of Capricorn. And this has invited us to look at power structures, to look at those systems of power that seem all encompassing, right? The systemic issues, but also those things that feel as if they are larger than what we can be. And it is the sign of Capricorn that does represent culmination in and of itself. If you think about the zodiac and going around the wheel of the zodiac, the zodiac new year starts in the spring with the sign of Aries. And then we get this sense of building, right? Each sign carries with it its skills, its understanding of the human journey. We get to Capricorn, and this is a point of culmination. Capricorn has this natural correspondence with the 10th house, which represents the zenith of the sky. And with Pluto here at the height of its power, on the one hand, because it's at the very end of its sign, this is a concentration point that astrologers call an anaretic degree. It's not just Capricorn energy, it's like jacked up Capricorn energy. And then you've got Pluto actually here, which amps up the jacked up principle playing out now. But then also that this is a point of really wrapping things up and feeling all that sense of awareness around those structures that we feel are in our way, all our frustrations with that coming right to the surface. But then there's Mars, and Mars is at the very end of the sign of Cancer, and Mars is what the ancients considered exalted in Capricorn. And when you get a planet that is opposite the sign that it most loves to be in, well, that is when you get that planet needing to work that much harder, needing to figure out what power it actually has. And in the case of Mars, there's an emphasis on power itself, on force, on understanding what is worth fighting for and maybe what isn't. At 29 degrees, this degree of concentration, well, it's almost like we'll be working extra hard to understand healthy forms of power and what maybe aren't so healthy as well in our own lives and likely on a level of the collective as well. There's going to be a lot of tension in the air, as much as that new moon can bring with it, what I like to call a break of energy, which is a good thing, right? Which is the sense of release, a sense of understanding. And as much as that's there, which I really do like, I think that a new moon in Scorpio trine Saturn, no less, is going to be a saving grace of sorts, because it brings with it a healthy sense of being measured, an understanding that if we are patient, we can make greater gains, and it ensures and encourages us to behave from a place that fosters healthy self-respect. However, that opposition, there's something very alluring about it. That's how it is with energies of obsession and those lower vibrations. There's something about them in their toxicity that can feel like we really want to dive in that much more. It's like we start to associate life itself with intense experiences, intense emotions, not knowing that a life that's that much more contented could be lived in the middle spaces. Now, think about the other planets involved in this kite formation as well. We have Neptune, Pluto, which I already mentioned, but what we also have is Mercury here. And I think that's really interesting because that has to do with messaging. It has to do with what we're talking about, what we're communicating, and what we're understanding, especially where it comes to the deeper messages and what's really being said and what's not being said, but is quite clear as well. This can be an awareness around the fact that there are complexities or deeper truths constantly playing out, whether or not they're always evident to us. We can feel them on some level. But Neptune trine Mercury says we are inclined to hear what we want, to be swept up in an energy, swept up in a moment, instead of speaking from and understanding from a place of what's really going on. It's our own hopes that may color our vision at this time. And Pluto and Mars, for that matter, add that much more intensity to that perception that we may be having now. And then you add Uranus, part of a grand sextile. It is Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus that are dancing in this configuration that at times is going to be more precise than others, but really it started to kick in last year. We have felt this energy this year. We will next year in 2025, and especially 2026, 2027 with precision with these huge astrological transits that are going to be at play. I spoke about some of these in the decade ahead horoscope that I posted some 6 years ago now on my YouTube channel. I'll try to remember to link that below. But having said that, yeah, we are in these times when it can feel like there are big powers at play, but there's also a sense here of knowing, instinctively knowing that human beings are on an evolutionary path, that we as a collective are going through massive changes and trying to figure out what that's going to mean for us and what part we're going to play in that. Considering that water is so amplified at this time under the light of the new moon, this idea of empathy and fear, I think it's going to play a key part as well. My dear friend Michael Barwick and I recently had a conversation that was posted here on my YouTube channel about the Mars-Pluto opposition and what it's meant to be for us as a collective. It was very enlightening, and thank you for all the positive feedback that interview has gotten. I recently came across the work of this incredible charity. Their name escapes me as I'm recording this, but I will be sure to find some clips and post them here. I'll try to remember to link to them below so you can see their Instagram. Now, I do so with some caution. A lot of their content is very explicit, and it can be very triggering to those of you who, like myself, love animals. When we look at animals, we see the divine within them. We see brethren, we see ourselves. And it is animals that speak to the heart of me so much in their instinctiveness, in their love, in their innocence. And on this page, I was thinking about the workers, and I was thinking about how there's this phenomenon of rescue worker exhaustion and how hard it is to be in that line of work, especially when, like this organization, you're seeing constant pain, you're seeing suffering, you're seeing cruelty. How do you navigate the world from that place? How do you stay focused on love? And the founder of this group, or at least the person who's at the head of it, such an articulate, amazing person from what I've seen online. She was saying that she was interviewed and she was asked, what's your motivation? And the people expected her to say compassion, but instead she said rage. It is rage. I just cannot stand that we are allowing this to happen, this suffering to happen. And I thought about that feeling itself, right? And how that feeling, there's a way to go about it. There's a way to act from that feeling that still stays grounded in love, that stays grounded in kindness, because that really is the only way you're even able to do that work, to look at the things that other people don't want to look at or that they deny is even an issue, and to work to heal things on that level. It is the only way. It is to root yourself in love of some kind. Now, rage is one thing, passion is another, and acting from a place of passion. If you are so inspired, I'll link to them below. In watching the woman behind this charity, she said something that shifted something very profoundly within me when she was asked, what is it going to take for things to actually change, for the world to be better towards animals? And she said, it takes imagination. It takes the ability to imagine a world that is more loving towards animals. I'm paraphrasing here in a big way. But she talked about how when people are living in such dire circumstances, when there is abject poverty, when there is instability, when there is insecurity, it becomes very hard to actually imagine anything beyond your own needs and your immediate needs of you and those people who you are responsible towards. And if you feel like you can't even meet those very basics, it's very hard to have any kind of energy to imagine something better. Those of us who do have that opportunity, we owe it to ourselves to use that power of imagination that much more responsibly and with that much more reverence as well. We are so blessed that having certain basic needs met means that we can start to consider what to other people might feel like loftier aims. Things like how it is that we can be a force of greater love and wisdom in the world. And I do believe that the way it begins, the very beginning, is to shine some of that love and wisdom towards yourself so that you are so in that place that then your actions arising from that place can be that much more effective. Now, you will see this charity again. You know, in December, I always do 24 days of giving. And I like to mention different charities that I support in my own life and in my own time. So I'll be sure to mention them again once we get into December. But yeah, I wanted to mention them now because it was just such a moving thing to think about. How can we approach putting love in the world in the face of things that feel just not loving at all? They feel like the opposite. How are we going to embody love in the face of our own fear, our own anger, our own frustration for what it is that we want to be different? This is going to be part of the balance that a lot of us are going to be asked to find in one way or another. But I have to say, like, both are really strong right now. It's like the love is really strong, the determination is really strong, but so is the fear. And so whatever it is that we can give into, but at the same time, strive to make sure that we can still be useful to others in the process, because the things of the world, they can overwhelm us. And a week like this says that our emotions are running so high that there is going to be a need to touch grass, to do those things that help to keep us in a place where we remember our embodied lives and we remember the love that is there. Because from that place, we're that much more able to not only find a peace within, but be a force of peace to everyone around us. When we have these big energies at play, they tend to be a lot more dominant, and the other stuff that's happening ends up supporting these larger configurations that represent a time of karmic change and momentum for the collective. But look at some of the other things that are happening under the sky. We have Mercury opposite Uranus, and this is a surprise a minute, especially when it comes to what we're talking about, the news. And because it is Mercury in the sign of Scorpio, I think very suddenly some truth is going to be revealed. The trine of Neptune says either we're going to be inclined to believe some spin around it, or it's going to be the case that because of what is revealed, we find new inspiration at this time. On Monday, Venus will square Saturn, and this is a big reality check moment. And I always see Saturn as representing delayed gratification and an awareness of sacrifice. With Venus, Venus has to do with pleasure and love, of course, but it also has to do with prosperity as well. And so I see this as a moment where we're asking ourselves, do I love it? Is there love here? Is this love? Is this spending? Is this earning? Is this pleasure worth the sacrifice? Or can I hold off for a larger gain? Am I willing to do the work for that larger gain? The thing with squares of Saturn is when the square is occurring, you can't get what you want. That's one of the key characteristics. It is very difficult to get what it is that you want. It is more about asking yourself if the pathway that's brought you here is worth continuing to go on, even though you know there are delays, or are you going to cut your losses and go a whole other way? At the very end of the week, Mercury changes signs, moving into the sign of Sagittarius. Talk about absolutely perfect, just in time for a huge election that's going to take place early next week in the United States. Sagittarius is the sign of the politician, of policies, of political involvement, and it has to do with our ability to connect with others or think about what kind of world we actually want to live in. And so this actually is ideal for that last minute hustle that I think these both presidential candidates are going to be making. So yeah, there's going to be big time hustle mode happening. But remember, this is happening under the same sky as that opposition of Mars and Pluto. It's going to be stronger and stronger as we get later into the week. And at the very beginning of next week, it is going to perfect. And while so much emotion is stirring for so many of us, Mercury moving into Sagittarius is going to invite us to also be hopeful, like actively hopeful, to have conversations that lift our spirits and to understand the value of focusing on what is so good right now, and also having the belief that things can get even better. And you don't have to be perfect at it, right? There's no such thing as perfect love. I mean, this square that's happening of Venus and Saturn, that tells me that, yeah, there is no such thing as a perfect love or guiding the heart perfectly. It takes work to do it. And sometimes it takes sacrifice as well. But if you're motivated, those sacrifices can actually be worth it. And where it is that we stay connected to a sense of purpose, well, we truly become unstoppable. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It is a powerful and meaningful astrological moment. It is a massively important moment. There's no way, there's like not words enough to say how big a moment this is. We are at the precipice of one of the peak moments of the year, and that is that opposition of Mars and Pluto. And even though it perfects at the very beginning of next week, we are going to feel its energy grow that much more as we navigate this time. And we're going to feel it here accelerated that much more under the light of the new moon. I'm very encouraged by the fact that the new moon is trine Saturn. It does suggest that we are thinking long-term, big picture, but we're also behaving in a way that fuels self-respect and creates greater stability in our lives and the lives of others. But ultimately, so much of what's happening now is us being invited to look at who we have been and whom we are becoming, and to make a choice. And where it is that we are well rooted in those very principles of love and wisdom, we can't choose wrong. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys, and to prove it to you, here are some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares a thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes for each and every sign for as low as just $3 a month with choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. We are in the final stretch, the last couple of days of the book sale at Synchronicity Publications, of these big courses that are starting at Synchronicity University. With the book sale, there's lots of bonuses you get if you choose to get a signed copy of one of my books. I thank you so much for the love and support that you've given my work and the enthusiasm you show for my work. But if you know that you would like to have a book for somebody to give them a gift over the holiday season, this would be the time to purchase. The next book drop is going to go out towards the beginning of December. And at that time, I can't guarantee that you'll get it in time for the holiday season. So if you know you want it for yourself, for someone else, please do order now. But also check out the amazing gifts you get depending on what book you get. There's a discount on shipping rate happening now as well. All of that at synchronicitypublications.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University presents these incredible programs. And look, you've got just a couple days left to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class to learn from these incredible astrologers only at Synchronicity University with our world famous Choose Your Tuition Rate. It's on only until Halloween. Halloween is this week. And so sign up now. I'm going to start with my own class, which is Life Cycles. I'm going to be teaching a brand new course, and this is about looking at the returns, right? But it's not just about the Saturn return or the Jupiter return or the Chiron return. It's about what happens along the way that helps you to make the most of those moments when a big planet comes back to where it was at the moment of your birth. The most famous of which is, of course, the Saturn return every 28.5 years. But along the way, there's the Saturn opposition that also happens every 28.5 years, but it happens like 14 years before the return and then again 14 years after the return. We get the Saturn square, and that happens 7 years after the return or 7 years before the return. And so we'll be looking at these different aspects and their significance and how, in many ways, it is the opposition that gets us really honest. And from that place of honesty, we put ourselves on a path so that when that major life transition comes with the return, you're able to make the most of it because you've strived to stay honest with yourself and you've made changes along the way. With Jupiter, well, of course, Jupiter return is thought to be this time of immense luck, but it is the Jupiter opposition every 12 years that helps us to understand the pathway towards what it is that we're hoping will be our big blessings and what more there might be to travel yet. It is the Jupiter squares that might have us going way over the top, going way overboard, and yet in so doing, we end up understanding where we may need to refine our course to actually manifest those big blessings we are desiring. And the same is true with Chiron as well, where it is that we're moving towards a more healed, empowered version of ourselves. We're going to be looking at that cycle in another class. The Uranus return, which happens every like 82 to 84 years. So normally people get about one Uranus return in a lifetime. And that's a time of big breakthroughs and clarity. But along the way, these are those moments that shift our pathway forward, that help us to be more of our true selves and our authentic selves. And then, of course, even though we don't normally get the Neptune return or the Pluto return, we still have key moments along the way that help us to check in with where we are operating from faith and where it's illusion, as is the case with Neptune, and where it is that there's deeper healing and awareness around power and a deep powerlessness that is part of the human condition. Well, that's part of what Pluto shows us as well. We're going to be looking at all of this in my course, Life Cycles. You've literally got just a few days left to choose your tuition rate as we start this week. As low as just $5 a class to learn from me, Life Cycles, this November, only at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University presents Tiffany HARELIK, the mystic within. You are about to have an awakening of your psychic and intuitive powers and so much more. Thanks to Tiffany HARELIK. She is such a superstar in her understanding of spirit and how you can tap into, not only from an astrological perspective, but a real experiential perspective as well. This course is going to help you to understand what your unique intuitive powers just might be and how you can make them that much stronger and how it is that you can live a life that feels that much more in alignment with truly mystical energy. This is a rare opportunity to learn from Tiffany HARELIK. You've got a few days left to learn from Tiffany HARELIK at just $5 a class, only at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University presents JANÉT Jones, Advanced Astrological Techniques. This will take your practice to the next level. JANÉT is the fierce person, the force behind Spiritual Gangster Certified. And this course is going to focus a lot on Duads and Decans and so much more. And it is in the practice of understanding these advanced techniques that we're able to bring that much more nuance and touch on that much more truth for the people that we might serve with our practice, but also towards our own self-understanding as well. We had a fun conversation where we looked at the charts of Drake and we looked at J-Lo, and that was a lot of fun to do as well because both of them are having some pretty intense Pluto transits. If you don't know, now you know, right? But she looked at those charts for us and helped us to understand how adding the layers of understanding the Decans and Duads placements of big planets in their charts. Well, how does it help us to understand them more, but also their pathway forward that much more as well? And that's what this class is going to do for you. So there's a lot to learn over this 5 weeks from JANÉT Jones. She is the force behind Spiritual Gangster Certified. She is an incredible astrologer. If you haven't seen her YouTube channel just yet, you really should. That's where I found her. And she impressed me so much, and I love working with her now. As low as just $5 a class, you've got a few days left for that choose your tuition rate at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University presents an incredible speaker series. Mystic Nights is what we're looking at here. This is in celebration of Scorpio season. You've got a few days left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class to learn from these incredible astrologers. And you know they're incredible because you've seen them on my channel before. Each one of them has spoken at Synchronicity University before, and now they are back, which is perfect, right? For Scorpio season, calling back the spirits, connecting to ancient spirits. Well, they're not quite ancient, but you've seen them before. So that makes them familial in some way or another. I'm going to start with Michael Barwick, my dear friend I mentioned earlier. And Michael is going to help us to understand astrology, magic, and gemstones. Such a powerful thing to take into consideration, the power of gemstones and using them right now to align with what it is you're hoping to manifest. Mark McGowan, How to Be a Medium. This is such a powerful understanding of how to magnify your own energy of connecting with spirits, whether they are people within your own family line, your ancestors, or otherwise. Mark is going to give you some very specific techniques to help you to understand how to bring forward your own mediumship powers. Natalia Calmon. Now, Natalia is going to be helping us to understand Pluto transits by considering the myth of Odin, right? So this is a myth that's not always associated with understanding Pluto transits. A lot of the mythologies around Western astrology are rooted largely in Greek mythology, but she's going to bring this whole other tradition into the mix to help us to understand what it's like to experience a Pluto transit and how we can make the most of it. Bear River is back, and he's going to help us to understand astrological magic and ancestral magic as well. And Ursula Stockter, brilliant astrologer. You've seen her lots of times here on my YouTube channel and at Synchronicity University. Jungian analyst, is going to help us to understand the symbolism of tarot with that much more depth and nuance. So you can see here, we've got an incredible group of astrologers who are going to help us to understand magic and mystery and so much more just in time for Scorpio season. As part of the November 2024 speaker series, you've got a few days left to choose your tuition rate, as well as just $5 a class to learn from these incredible astrologers only at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. And thank you. Thank you so much for this moment with you. Thank you for your trust. I'm so grateful for it. The short horoscopes that are going to be coming up right now, I think I'm going to focus them on the opposition of Mars and Pluto and what that might be for you in your sign. And of course, the new moon and the full moon later in the month of November. I will talk all about that in the monthly horoscopes, so be on the lookout for that. I'd hope to have Mars retrograde special horoscopes done by now, but it doesn't look likely. I'll do my darndest and I'll do my best. But you know, the special horoscopes, they tend to take a lot of time to produce because each video can run upwards of 45 minutes of recording and then editing it down. And so, I mean, I'm just really grateful for all the enthusiasm and love that you show for my work. So thank you for that. And once they are ready, you will know, you'll see it all over social media, through my newsletter, and of course, If you're a superstar, they'll be made available to you first, of course, as always. My sincere wish is for all of us to navigate this time well, practicing self-care and finding that we have that much more to give to ourselves and to each other. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. Mars opposite Pluto just might end up being the most important aspect of 2024. Mars at the very end of the sign of Cancer, having to do with our roots, our families, our past, our country, and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, having to do with power, power structures, our ancestors, and our contribution to our descendants, and so much more. Well, this is the ancient ruling planet of Scorpio and the modern ruling planet facing off. We're looking at where we've been, how we feel about it, but what it is that we want to do next and where it is we're going. And in some cases, we're being painfully honest with ourselves about that as well. That's really the only way to change our pathway forward. For some of us, where it is that we strive to elevate the energy, well, this is going to show us anything that's getting in the way of our healthy evolution so that we step into a new understanding of what power is going to mean for us going forward from here, whom we're going to allow to have power and whom it is that we're no longer going to allow to have power in our lives. But for others, that allure of being powerful, wielding power, it's going to feel very hard to resist, but the choice is always ours. Are we going to operate from a place of our woundedness, our more base instincts, or are we going to be a force of healthy transformation in our lives and the lives of others? That just might be where true power is found. Now, how this opposition is going to play out for you in your life, well, it's going to speak to two distinct areas of life that are set up from a place of tension. But remember, it's almost as if we're being pulled towards Mars, but we know that Pluto is the direction that we're meant to go if we're going to elevate and make that energy that much more healthy and that much more profound. Take your sun, moon, rising sign, all three into consideration and synthesize the information to make it unique for you. And of course, there's lots more horoscopes on right now on my YouTube channel and of course at NadiyaShah@superstars.com. Aries, the areas of tension set up here are between the foundations of your life, maybe your living situation or your family of origin, and what it is you believe is a higher, more loving vision for your life. It's possible at this time that it feels like a family member pushes your buttons. So you do want to be sure to practice self-care and strive to create a sanctuary right where you are at home. You are understanding power very differently, and that in turn is going to change your understanding of how you're going to wield it in a larger sense going forward from here. Taurus, communication, conversation, the power of your words. This is where you may find yourself having to pay attention now as you say something or do something that provokes or evokes a certain reaction that you hadn't anticipated. But for all that, you're also being asked to elevate your understanding of the higher purpose behind whatever it is that you perceive, whatever it is that you choose to share, and to understand how the power of your mind determines so much of how you understand the world around you. And when you raise that understanding, well, you can't help but see wisdom playing out everywhere. Gemini, money you earn, money you spend, that's where Mars is right now and is highlighting in real ways what you feel is worth doing for money and what isn't. What I can say is we are in Mars shadow, and the larger lessons you're learning now will stay with you for a very long time to come as you find answers to the questions of what prosperity is for you, to define it on your own terms. Well, it is going to involve being more deeply honest with yourself, getting to the core, the root understanding of some really early messages and healing from that place. That's where that Pluto placement will help you. Cancer, identity, priorities. If anybody's going to be feeling this opposition of Mars and Pluto, it certainly is you with Mars in your sign. Now, what's going to bring you back to an understanding of who you are is probably going to be an interaction with another person, a business partner or a romantic partner. And this reminder of who you are stirs something very deep within you. There's an understanding on your part as to how relationships, reflect some truth about how you hold you. And when you raise your own standard for how well you are with yourself, well, other people, they must fall in line if they're going to stay around and be part of more healthier alliances ahead. Leo, soul, psyche, spirit, so much is stirring within you now. It may feel more and more, that much more on the surface as you understand what stays and what goes, what you're wanting, what you're not wanting. And some of it may not even be conscious. This is a very restless energy. It may very well be some dramatic up and down events in the workplace related to an awareness of how little power you have over the type of work you're doing or the people who surround you in your day-to-day life. It ultimately helps you to understand that much more deeply who's going to stay and who's going to go as part of you claiming a sense of empowerment going forward from here. Virgo, friendships and group alliances, they are going to be perhaps stressful. I do want to be straightforward with you here, but you're really coming to understand something about who key people are, the truth of how they affirm who you are and what you are really wanting and where they take you off track. Healthy alliances will grow stronger, but if you are caught in a power struggle with someone in a group dynamic or a friend, it may very well feel downright exhausting now to the point where you get to decide who stays and who goes. Libra, career, social standing, and life purpose. Bosses in particular, they may be very dramatic at this point. It may feel like it's a bit of a roller coaster ride with certain bosses in your life, and you get to decide what's okay for you and also what isn't. This could be a time of a big career change, or at least the very beginning of realizing that that's what you're really wanting. It's also a chance for you to look at where your definition of success actually comes from so that you ensure it aligns with what feels like it authentically resonates with you today. Scorpio, literal matters here have to do with long distance travel, immigration, citizenship, higher learning, and legal matters. If you're involved in anything like that now, it's going to get that much more of your attention to the point where it may feel tiring. But otherwise, this has to do with your political, spiritual, and philosophical beliefs. And this can be a time when you're really looking at what beliefs are worth giving yourself to and giving your energy and effort to, and maybe where it is that you're changing now. This is your modern ruling planet and your ancient ruling planet standing across the sky, meaning that it isn't just about what it appears to be on the surface, but it is this moment that represents an important moment for the larger trajectory of your life and nothing less. It is a chance to really look at your relationship with the world and where you are ready to have it evolve towards something better. Sagittarius, profound change, truth, transformation, regeneration. This area of life is going to feel and have you feeling like your emotion is stirring so strongly within. This is all about intensity, but outside of the emotional reality you might be having now, which is soul stirring, and even obsessive, you are going to want to be mindful of that and make sure you're channeling this energy towards the change you desire instead of just wasting it towards some sense of focusing in on a matter that feels alluring, but maybe may not be of any consequence at all. For all that though, where it comes to being able to access resources, having to communicate with a financial institution, it may feel like you're trying to access benefits or a loan or a grant. And this is where you're really having to pull out all the stops or bring forward your best energy to find a way to tap into the resources that are there, but you're navigating some pretty powerful spiritual lessons along the way. Capricorn, love, partnerships of all kinds. Oh my goodness, do you ever feel pulled in? It could be pulled towards a particular person, pulled towards some messy drama at this time, but it's all showing you something about where you are in love and how you feel about it. There's such a strong desire to partner up with somebody, but that could also be where there's some sense of tension or struggle as you realize there's only so much power you have over another. Ultimately, it is about you owning a sense of presence and getting clear about the type of partnerships you deserve. And from there, your choices become that much more organic. They flow that much easier. Aquarius, clients, customers, coworkers, immediate supervisors, and the work that you're doing. There's going to be a lot going on in the workplace now. Lots of activity. Just try to make sure you're practicing self-care, because if you're not, this is going to be one of those times when you start to identify where you really need to take better care of your health. You could just run yourself ragged and end up tiring yourself out and wasting a lot of energy in a direction that really doesn't really matter that much or doesn't count for much. For all that, this can be powerful energy to be honest with yourself about what needs to change as part of taking the best of care of you and moving into alignment with a stronger state of health. Pisces, romance, flirtation, what the heart wants in every area of life. A key flirtation now could have a profound, transformative effect on your life, regardless of what actually happens in the real world or not. But for all that, this can also be a moment where you're getting in touch with what you need to be happy. And you are facing some frustration of where maybe you got in your own way of embracing what it is that you really want to do, where you think your happiness and your fulfillment lie. That moment of honesty is the first step towards living the life you imagine. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.